Hi everyone, this is Dr. Peggy Semingson and I'm in the Virtual Teamwork PLC. I wanted to explore the different multifaceted ways to use Microsoft Teams, and I used it in a mobile app and we used it also in the desktop version, so there were different ways students could access it, and I'm going to talk about how it was used primarily as a back channel. So I teach a class with 48 students on campus. It was shifted to online. And so I'll talk about ways it was used in both contexts. So again, this is a microlearning approach. Microlearning is short bursts of content, so it's not something as lengthy as a discussion board, but it is still fostering engagement, learning, and interaction, just short bits of content, microlearning. And the back channel is something people do but maybe aren't aware they do. So a back channel is something where students are communicating with one another. And I'm more peripheral to the process, but I do set up and structure prompts, questions, and things for them to do in the back channel in real time. I'm going to talk about the different ways I do that. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about an idea I have for criteria for assessing participation. So what is a back channel? It's a real-time dialogue in a digital space. It's mostly live, but students can add replies after the fact. There is a really good article here from EDUCAUSE about back-channel communication. It does foster more voices, so in a large class, students can chime in without having to raise their hand. They can see what other students are thinking, and I think the most obvious analogy is to live tweeting through an event. And so students can also chime in during class. It's password protected, private and secure, and all those good things, so it's a safe space to share ideas. It's not out there. It's a walled garden approach. So why use it? Active learning, engagement, and student voice. This quote is from that EDUCAUSE article. By acknowledging or taking control of the background conversation, the presenter can initiate a second channel where timid audience members can see questions posed by others and be drawn in the discourse. So what I teach is an elementary literacy class for early childhood through 6th grade teacher certification candidates. It's a lot of content and I want them thinking and actively learning with it. So I've developed this microlearning experience. So the curricular goals I'm going to go through is I want them to engage in knowledge sharing as it relates to our various course topics. By the way, we would use the back channel in class every single time. They would also engage in resource sharing and curation of content. So like find an example of a phonics chart poster, explain how it works. Then I would have them dialogue through their replies and interaction on the back channel. Virtual exit tickets, so some of us are familiar with that. I'll explain it. And then just-in-time sharing of ideas on the back channel. So what I did is I put a description in the syllabus that we're going to have this back channel. Please download it. You can access it in a variety of ways. So I did encourage them to use the mobile app if they needed to. And some students are working primarily on their phones, so that's important. So one example is knowledge sharing. So I would say, share what you know about fluency development, and they would type that into the back channel. They could talk through that in a face-to-face class first and then post, or they could just post. So I left it up to them. This is a way to foster face-to-face teamwork with virtual posting. The second example was resource sharing and curation of content. So this is where I would say, find an example of a phonics chart, explain how it's used and how you might use it in your future classroom. Then I would encourage them and sometimes require them to post a reply to one other person. They could also post the reply later, so the reply part could be delayed, and that gave them time to read through outside of class, and it was an easy way to participate. So I really just looked through it for completeness and participation. Virtual exit tickets. This idea has been around for a while. So at the end of class, an old-fashioned way to do this is on paper where they write down something they've learned or respond to a prompt. It can also be in the middle of class. So they did this on the Teams back channel, and it allowed them to synthesize learning. So I would say write for 6 to 7 minutes and then post to Teams. Reply to at least one person, and this encouraged them to look back through their material to see what they've learned today. I would also, if we had time, use this to launch a discussion. So say, let's let's share out loud what you wrote. So they were interacting with one another, replying. They could also post questions. So concluding thoughts, the focus was on mobile learning and microlearning and near real-time learning with the synchronous aspect of the back channel, but they could also do the asynchronous where they could go back and read through other people's. I was noticing some mobile device use in class. I myself was using my own mobile device as an instructor to monitor the chat in real time, and it worked really well. And I was able to comment on that in class. It worked well with face-to-face settings, and then when we moved over to online, I was able to have them still do the virtual exit ticket at the end of our live webinars. So it really worked well with this function of the exit ticket in particular. It was very structured. Future directions is to increase accountability, so give criteria for what a good participation in the back channel looks like. It's detailed. You're providing good input, you're replying to others. So future goals include ways to better structure the accountability component and listing criteria for good participation in the back channel. I also want them to think in meta ways on how they can use a back channel in their own future teaching. So that is my foray into Microsoft Teams for virtual teamwork. It was in the informal virtual teamwork category.